Mawdryn Undead must be one of the more complicated stories in all of classic Doctor Who. It introduces a new companion, brings back an old one in 2 different incarnations, and tells a complex time travel storyline as well. In many ways it feels like an early version of one of Stephen Moffat's time-twisting stories from the new series. And it's good to get something that feels a bit more involved than usual. It certainly feels much more adult in tone without resorting to excessive violence. Turlough's introduction is perhaps the most significant part of the story. He gets a lot more focus here than most companion introductions, though we still learn very little about him. Here he is introduced as a public schoolboy with a straw hat, stealing a vintage car, in scenes which could take place at any time from the 1920s onwards, but we later find out that it was actually 1983. Turlough is a much more complex character than most companions. He's intelligent and sarcastic, and morally ambiguous. His background is left a mystery, but the fact that he recognises advanced technology and doesn't consider Earth to be home indicates that he could very well be an alien in exile. Though it is very subtle, and it didn't register on me when I watched this story as a child. So perhaps they could have spelled it out a bit more for the benefit of the younger audience. After Turlough crashes the car, he finds himself in a garish, multicoloured void, which looks much better if you turn on the CGI effects on the DVD. There he meets the Black Guardian, played by Valentine Dyall. It's been 4 years since he vowed to get his revenge on the Doctor, so he's taken his time. He's certainly a threatening presence. All he really does is shout at Turlough, but he's still terrifying, and I was definitely scared of him as a child. Meanwhile, on the TARDIS, Tegan is still in shock after her possession by the Mara, and Janet Fielding does play her as much more subdued than usual throughout the whole story. Nyssa has a new outfit, which is much better than her previous 2, though it does look like she hasn't finished doing it up. The TARDIS is forced to land in a mysterious ship, which looks more like a luxury hotel. You can see the set designers really went to town on that one. The Doctor takes Turlough back to Earth in 1983, while Tegan and Nyssa take the TARDIS back to 1977, for reasons which I'm sure make sense to somebody. Turlough tries to bash the Doctor over the head with a rock, as ordered by the Black Guardian. Obviously he doesn't succeed, but it does make for a great cliffhanger. Unfortunately, it does mean that Turlough is sidelined for the rest of the story, as there's only so many times that he can almost kill the Doctor. And at this point the Brigadier makes his entrance. Originally they were planning to bring back Ian Chesterton for this story, which would have been really interesting, and would have been a much better send-off for the character than his cameo in The Power of the Doctor. But instead, Nicholas Courtney returns for the first time since Terror of the Zygons. It's good to see him again, and he gives one of his best performances. With 1977 Brig still very much the stiff upper lip military man ordering people about, while the 1983 Brigadier is much more relaxed and easygoing. And the scene where he gets his memories of the Doctor back is very emotional, though it is really just another excuse to show lots of black and white clips of past episodes. Tegan, Nyssa and the young Brigadier find a burn victim in his pants and automatically assume it to be the Doctor, although they don't bother asking him any questions that only the Doctor would know the answer to, which would clear the matter up very quickly. This is Mawdryn, played by David Collins, unrecognisable from the Robots of Death, in stripy robes and with the red cabbage stuck to his head. I think it's meant to be his brain bursting through, but who can tell. He's not really a villain, he just wants to end the curse of his eternal life, and the fact that it would strip the Doctor of all his remaining regenerations makes for quite a moral dilemma. You can certainly understand why the Doctor initially refuses, but in the long run it's probably the right thing to do. And just because he would have to give up all his remaining regenerations doesn't necessarily mean that he couldn't live to a ripe old age in his current body. The final 2 episodes are probably the weakest, as there's too many scenes of characters just running about from room to room on a spaceship. But eventually the 2 Brigadiers meet up, and the resulting explosion acts as a kind of Deus Ex Machina, killing off Mawdryn and all of his clones, and leaving the young Brigadier in the state that the old one remembered being. It's a very neat ending. Emotionally it feels right, but there are an awful lot of plot holes if you think about it, so it's probably best not to. The DVD has about 45 minutes of extras. Who Wants to Live Forever is a 24-minute documentary, narrated by Lady Froella Benjamin. Eric Sayward and some of the actors are filmed on location, so it looks pretty good. And they all tell some amusing stories about Valentine Dyall. They even rope in Lucy Benjamin, who played young Nyssa in one scene and went on to star in EastEnders. There's a 7-minute sketch with the Brigadier being interviewed. It's nothing special, but it must be one of the last times that he played the Brigadier. Probably around the same time as his episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures. so it works as one final nostalgic send-off for the character. There's also 5 minutes of deleted scenes, mainly longer takes of the location footage, 3 minutes of film trims, which is more of the same but silent, and 5 minutes of outtakes with cast members fluffing their lines, which isn't very funny and feels a bit mean, to be honest. Overall, it's a very ambitious story, which doesn't entirely work, but it's full of interesting ideas. I'll give it 7.5 out of 10. Next week, Terminus. Possibly the weakest of the trilogy, but we'll see. Subscribe to see what I make of it, and I'll see you next time.